Welcome to the Instagram Stories for Saturday, August 9th. I'm your host, Daniel Hill, and this is the weekend edition of the Instagram Stories. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the Instagram map feature that they just released, the backlash that it's received, the poor way that it was executed, and what you can do to ensure that your location is not being shared when you don't want it to be. Friend of the show, Lia Haberman from the In Case You Missed It newsletter is going to stop by to explain the controversy, and the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, will explain how to ensure that your location is kept private. Additionally, we bust the myth that you have to interact with people who you want to see your content so that they will see your content when you post it. That is not how it works. The head of Instagram explains all of that. Lastly, Ashley Coffey and I are going to dive into some AI news, talking about how Perplexity's AI is scraping the web, Cloudflare is preventing it, Perplexity is working around that, and additionally, we were talking about Google's Genie 3 AI video creation tool, which is unlike anything I've ever seen. All of that and more on today's episode, but first, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back. Let's start with the Instagram map feature, which I covered on the show on Wednesday. If you did not have a chance to hear it, go back and listen to Wednesday's episode so you understand what the Instagram map feature is and how it works. However, there has been a lot of controversy about this new feature since it was released, with a lot of people feeling that Instagram is now sharing their location without their permission. To be fair, you may have shared your location with Instagram recently. For instance, if you gave Instagram the ability to see where you are because you wanted to tag a specific restaurant you were at, or venue, or city, you may have shared your location with Instagram, and now that post is visible on a map, and your friends could see where you were at that point in time when you made the post. To explain why this is such an issue, here's Lia Haberman from the In Case You Missed It newsletter.
Hey, this is Lia Haberman of In Case You Missed It, the social media newsletter that cuts through the clutter and gets to the point as quickly as possible. So Instagram has a new feature, one of many, but this one is causing some controversy. I'm talking about Maps. It was just released this week, and it's a product that was very clearly aimed at Gen Z, I think as a response to Snap Maps, which has 400 million monthly active users. I think Meta saw that and thought, yeah, let's get into this business. But here's the issue with the release of Instagram Maps. Now, a lot of creators were already on the map at launch with zero heads up. I think this was probably because it was based on maybe prior settings, location sharing settings, or maybe it was a glitch. But I've heard from a lot of creators and some talent reps who are furious that they weren't given a heads up to prep for this. And all day Thursday, Mosseri was busy posting that it was an opt-in service. But that's not entirely accurate because tagging a location pulls your content into a heat map surrounding that location, whether or not you've opted in to share your location. So you may think you've turned off sharing, but you're still getting pulled into these content maps. So, and look, if the head of the company needs to spend the entire day defending a product online, that is not a user problem, that is a you problem. This product should have been more cautiously designed given Meta's spotty track record with data privacy, and the messaging should have come earlier, much earlier, and in a lot more detail. All right, for more social media updates, check out In Case You Missed It, and back to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Lia. She did such a good job encapsulating that issue. She had written it out in a Threads post, but I asked her to make an audio version for all of you listening because she did such a good job on it. I will link to the In Case You Missed It newsletter and Lia's Threads post so that you can read it for yourself. Now, I do want to give Adam Mosseri an opportunity to explain from the Instagram side what is actually happening here. Here's the clip.
So just to be super clear, if you post something, it's not going to show up on a map unless you add a location to it, which you have been able to do for a long time and has always been able to be seen on that post and even on a map. But if you don't want your posts or your stories or your reels to show up on maps, just don't add a location to it and it cannot show up on a map.
Okay, I wanted to play his side, not only to be fair, but also that answer makes it seem like you should have known that adding a location to a post in the past would make it one day appear on a map that people could see. That's sort of user blaming, and I don't particularly like that approach. Okay, we're going to let the head of Instagram now bust a myth about how it works when it comes to having your content reach the eyeballs that you want on Instagram and what you have to do to make that happen. Here's the clip.
One myth I learned recently about Instagram is that you have to interact with similar content to the content that you create to maximize your reach. And that is definitely not the case. It's great to interact with people in your comments and with your followers in general, but what you decide to consume is not going to affect who you reach with your content. We want people to see stuff that they're interested in. What you're interested in is not necessarily an indicator of who is or is not interested in your content. So feel free to just engage with the content that you love and then try to create content that your followers might love.
Okay, nice to know how that works. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into this week's AI news. Stick around. Welcome back. Here's Ashley Coffey and I diving into this week's AI news. Let's continue with the articles that we're going to talk about. And the next one has to do with Perplexity. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about how Cloudflare was putting guardrails in place so that if companies are using Cloudflare as a service and they did not want their website or content to be scraped by AI, that they could prevent that. And if they wanted to accept payment for having their content crawled by AI, Cloudflare would administer that and be in the middle, which I thought was a very smart way to approach it. And we talked about how content creators should be able to have a determination in whether or not their content is used. Perplexity is an AI company that has been, according to Cloudflare, modifying their user agent to hide their activity when accessing Cloudflare sites. So Cloudflare observed that what Perplexity was doing was crawling and scraping content, but then when they reached the block, they would obscure the identity of the agent that Perplexity was using so that they would try to get around this Cloudflare protection. The CEO of Cloudflare actually said something pretty interesting. He said, "We observed Perplexity uses not only their declared user agent, but also a generic browser intended to impersonate Google Chrome on Mac OS when their declared crawler was blocked." So then the CEO said, "Is there a fair value exchange? With search engines, the fair value exchange was you let them have your content in exchange for them sending you traffic, and you could derive value from that. With these answer engines, AI, LLM, they take your content and send you what in exchange? If you're not getting anything in return, why would you give up your content?" Which makes total sense. But then some people were defending Perplexity, which I also see the logic of. Here's what one person said: "If I as a human request a website, then I should be shown that content. Why would the LLM accessing the website on my behalf be a different legal category than the web browser that I'm using?" Which does make sense. If a human asked for that information, it might be using Perplexity as an AI tool to get that information, but it is a human ultimately making that request, and they're doing it through their Google Chrome or other browser. Another person said, "I want Perplexity to visit any public content on my behalf when I give it a request or a task." So I kind of see this from both sides. Ashley, what do you think?
I'm so glad that you pulled this one. And something that was really interesting is that they also elevated this right here, this line, that the ChatGPT agent is signing HTTP requests with the newly proposed open standard WebBot auth. So I wanted to demystify that. There's not a current standard. There's a proposed open standard. So I wanted to elevate that because we're still in the stages of it being developed. I've been using Perplexity's comment browser, and I've been really impressed with it. And it's also showed me some of the obvious issues of, like, I accidentally ordered Uber, or it ordered Uber for me, and I emailed a client for me. So it's in timeout. But I don't know if the public is ready for agentic AI, because if you think about how many mistakes that we as humans make, it's a lot of them, but it's our responsibility. But then, like you mentioned, we're starting to get into this category of, like, are we going to hold machines accountable for human error? As in what I did, I technically gave it permission to order Uber. I said, look for a meal under $20 that's Mexican food and that's could be delivered to this zip code, and it actually submitted the order. So I gave it the permission, but I could see that going off the rails, especially when it comes to financial information. But the net of this is that there will always be a workaround. If you create a block, someone's going to create a workaround. It's just the tale as old as time.
Yes. There's always a loophole or some other way to get through. Absolutely. Let's move on to the last story that I wanted to cover today, which is Google's DeepMind thinks its new Genie 3 world model presents a stepping stone toward AGI. If you have not seen this new Genie 3 model, it can generate multiple minutes of interactive 3D environments at 720 resolution, 24 frames per second, and it has promptable world events, which means that you can use a prompt to change the video that you're looking at in real time. This is unbelievable to see, and I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it. So I will just say that I watched a video, and I will link to it in the show notes, where the person typed the prompt to be walking along a river, and then they typed in a man in a chicken suit comes running in on the left side, and all of a sudden you see a man in a chicken suit. And then they type a man on a jet ski emerges, and then a dragon emerges, and all these things are happening while the person is typing. And it is so cool to watch. I was instantly thinking when I saw this video, when I make TikToks and Reels with my friends, how long until I just need a picture of my friends and I feed the AI model what I want them to say and what I want them to do, and I don't actually need my friends at all to be here to film the video. And I think this is so cool. If you haven't seen it, definitely check out the link. Ashley, did you have a chance to see it, and what do you think?
Yes, it's so cool. I'm glad that you picked this. And again, the video is amazing to articulate what this means. It's compounding collaboration in real time. It's blowing my mind in the best possible ways, I think. But also I wanted to flag that I know Meta is working on this as well to try to embed it within the Instagram app. I don't know how far along they are in that. They haven't said much about it lately, as far as I know. But it'll be nice to be able to go into just Instagram and say, hey, I need to do a 30-second video of me, rolling around in grass and, talking about some new French cheese that I like. Who knows? But now I don't have to go schedule a shoot, get my stuff done. I can just literally do something in real time and adjust it. This also makes me think that people are going to go off the rails on this too.
Yes, absolutely. But I think ultimately, if it makes it easier to create interesting video content, there's a lot of pluses there. And then eventually what happens, we reach a point where we don't want to watch anything AI and we only want to watch real humans doing real things. And we, have that disco is dead kind of moment and we flip back to what the world used to be. I don't know. But just what is possible here is very exciting.
What a time to be alive.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to stop the episode there, but you can listen to the rest of it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can even watch a video version. I will link to the rest of the episode in the show notes. Be sure to come back on Monday when we break down what the head of Instagram shared on his recent Ask Me Anything.
Let me tell you a couple things that you should know about me. A product manager, but do not have a bachelor's degree. But actually, that's factually a fraction of me. And other fractions posting content irregular and irrationally. Still probably won't get a job at the Gram. They forgot, they don't know, or don't care who I am. That's why you never see me at the parties and events. My lack of followers must make me irrelevant. Don't have a course, a book to sell to make a bag of grand. Not a social media marketer, don't represent any brands. Plain to see, don't have an agency, but I got a lot of spam. Just putting in the work, without the glitz and glam. Won't catch me eating fish, unless it's shrimp or clam. No six pack, no risk that, there's a gym card in my hand. Don't have a full-time job, but I got a lot of plans. Stay plotting, dropping knowledge on TikTok and Instagram.